This is the mushroom and herbal extraction class presentation. We're going to be talking about how to work with making medicine from mushrooms and from herbs. From what I know, I'm going to weave in some of my personal journey with my business and also give you some of the options that you can start with and maybe stay with, or if you want to work into more fancy equipment or maybe even more than that. The sky is the limit with this art, this craft. So it's really about how much you want to put into it. And there's really no wrong answer. So my name is Michael, and I own the company Harmony Acres, also the website All Things Amanita. I make mushroom and herbal extractions. I've been doing this since 2016, and really just started out of personal interest. I was foraging wild mushrooms for culinary purposes. Chicken of the woods, chanterelles, maitake, things like that. But in my foragings, I also discovered these other mushrooms that weren't poisonous, but they weren't really edible, but they served other purposes for humans. And so I started to look into these medicinal mushrooms and medicinal compounds. And there's a little part of me, a major part of me, that is a rebel. And I like things that I can have sovereignty over. And one of those things that I really love to have sovereignty over is my physical, mental, and spiritual health. And mushrooms, finding wild mushrooms that have medicinal compounds that maybe could extend my life or prevent me from having cancers or other diseases, really tickled that rebel, because I'm no longer outsourcing my health care. There's another mortar. I'm no longer outsourcing my health care to people that may not have my best interest in mind, or maybe they don't want to do it the way that I want to do it, which is naturally and holistically. So I started making mushroom tinctures originally, and I started working with herbs too. I was making them for my friends and family, and people really started to like them and they wanted to buy some, so I had to put a price on it, and then they continued to want to buy it, so I figured I should have like more stock of it. And then I started, doing this in my kitchen, just having things on my cupboard, doing the Folklore method, which I'll get into. And eventually it just kind of snowballed, and I realized that I really love doing this, and I love being a wood wizard and finding mushrooms and finding herbs and working with them, building relationships. One of the first mushrooms I ever worked with was Ganoderma tsugae, or the hemlock reishi. It grows in Pennsylvania, it grows in Ohio. I'm from Pennsylvania, and I was at one of my favorite parks, McConnell's Mill, and I knew that it was reishi season, and I knew that they would be out, but I couldn't find any. It was starting to get dark, and I was like, man, I really wanted to find reishi, and I know they're around here, but I can't find any. So I was like, man, it's getting dark. I got to go home soon. And I got this little message, said, go up the hill. And I'm looking at this like big steep hill. I don't know if everybody's been to Hell's Hollow. Yeah. So like the steep hill, you're walking, towards the mill.
How do you know about Hell's Hollow? You're in Pennsylvania.
Hell's Hollow and McConnell's Mills.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. There's a couple different Hell's Hollows, I guess. But so I got this little message, and it said, go up the hill. I'm climbing up this steep ass hill, just like, huffing it up here, sweating, and I get really tired, and I'm just like, man, I thought there was a mushroom. I got the message, right? And I lean against this tree, and I'm just like, oh man, I know there's a mushroom around here. And another little voice said, look behind the tree. And it was the tree that I was leaning against had a giant reishi mushroom growing on it. And it felt like I had unlocked like a new level in a video game or something, or like a new Pokemon, where I knew that reishi mushroom and I knew the energetic signature of that mushroom. And it was like, you can find me anywhere, just tune into this frequency. So that was really powerful for me. And I kind of knew that this medicine path was something that I really wanted to get deeper into. So, and reishi is still one of my favorite mushrooms because it's really, really aligning and really grounding, as well as all the other physical properties that it has. So, yeah. How many of you have made a tincture?
I'm trying.
You? Oh, yeah. You've made a lot of tinctures. And how many of you have ever seen a distillation? I bet that all of you have seen distillation. So, distillation actually occurs in nature. Whenever you go out in the morning, when the sun hits the ground right after a rain, you'll see steam rising. And what nature is doing and what we mimic is as distillation. So we're seeing this evaporation of water molecules in their pure form. There's no dirt or anything coming up. It's just pure water. And then it condenses whenever it gets higher in the atmosphere where it's cold and there's less oxygen. And then you see clouds, and then you see this dripping down, this rainfall, and it goes back into the rivers, back into the lakes, and then the process repeats. And you can actually think about this in a similar way. This equipment that we make, that, we think we're so smart, but we're actually just mimicking nature. So this is a reflux reactor, and I'll talk about that in a little bit, but we see the same concepts of heat at the bottom, cool at the top, this reflexive reaction happening. And you could also think about it with, anybody know what a torus or a toroidal field looks like? So the core of the earth is magma and it's really hot, and it expands out and then it cools in the crust. And there's also a magnetic field around the earth. And all of these things are kind of just recirculating. And this is exactly what we do with a reflux reactor. So it's pretty cool. We think we're really smart, but we didn't really invent this. We're actually just mimicking nature because we are nature. So like I said, I've been making mushroom tinctures and started with the Folklore method. Really wanted to have medicinal sovereignty over my health, and I really love to help people. And one of the greatest things that I get to do is wake up and read an email from somebody that said, hey, you either taught me this or I took one of your products and it's changing my life for the better. And I'm just like, there's nothing better for me to be able to make a difference in somebody's lives and to be able to bring these things from nature and make them accessible for people. I think it's really, really my passion. So I was like a landscaper and a carpenter and a truck driver and just doing this on the side. But then I started working with Amanita muscaria, and that was kind of the thing that really took off my business, and I had to quit all my other work and just devote my life to this this work that I do now. And so I do presentations at mushroom festivals. I have a full extraction lab. I do retail. I have multiple wholesale clients, and I also do teachings online and in person too, and consultations with people. And yeah, so another thing that's interesting is why are there medicinal compounds in mushrooms that are good for us? Why are there medicinal compounds in plants that are good for us? What's the purpose of that? Another thing where we're mimicking nature is, so mushrooms are a fruiting body of a larger organism that's underground or in a tree or a log or in a mulch pile, and that's the mycelium, and that's the actual organism. And the mushroom is just a fruit that comes out during the right seasonal conditions to help spread spores. And the mycelium is a web-like structure and it's actually very vulnerable. It doesn't have skin, it doesn't have a turtle shell, it doesn't have any kind of, physical defenses. So what it has to do to defend itself is produce different compounds. So it has these different terpenes and sterols and polysaccharides and things that actually are antiviral because they're fighting off viruses, or antibacterial because they're fighting off bacteria, or antifungal, they're fighting off other fungi. And so they excrete these compounds, and that's actually their defense system. And so whenever we do a proper extraction of these compounds, of these mushrooms, we actually get their defense system, and it works just for us as well. Another interesting thing, I don't know if you know this, but pine resin and pine sap, it's actually really similar to our blood. And if you have a really bad wound, you can pack your wound full of pine resin and it will completely heal it. It's antiseptic, it's antiviral, antibacterial. And what happens whenever a tree gets nibbled on by something or breaks a branch, it has an open wound and then it pours that sap out to cover that. And so there's another example about how we can harmonize with nature, which is really cool. Another thing that's interesting, plants have a lot of essential oils. So these are actually also defense mechanisms from the plants. They're highly volatile sesquiterpenes, and those are actually defense mechanisms, and they will alert other plants that, hey, there's like a predator nibbling on me, so like let's all boost up our oils. And then the classic example is the smell of fresh cut lawns is actually a billion blades of grass crying for their life. Help, I'm dying, and we're like, yeah, it smells good. Yep. So, pretty interesting stuff. Another reason why there are in the cell walls of mushrooms, we have polysaccharides, and these are kind of interwoven with chitin and other things that are indigestible. And so we do like a hot water extraction to pull out polysaccharides. Specifically, beta glucans are the polysaccharides that we're looking for medicinal compounds. And you can kind of see that right here. And where is it? The beta glucans are like these light blue structures. And then the chitin is this indigestible fiber. And if you ever have eaten a mushroom and you had gastrointestinal issues, it probably was from chitin. Like if you ever had psilocybin and you got a bellyache, one thing that might be good for you is make a psilocybin tea. And then filter out the mushrooms and then just drink the tea, because you would get the psilocybin compound without having to consume the cellular structure.
So is that a tea with heat?
What's that?
Is that with heat?
Heat? Yes. Yep. Okay. Yeah. And with psilocybin, you could do like boil water for like 15 minutes and like let it sit in there for another 15 minutes and then strain it. And it doesn't need a lot. You don't want to cook it because psilocybin is actually pretty heat sensitive. Okay. Unless you're cooking under a vacuum, which we'll talk about that. Yeah, and if anybody has questions throughout the presentation, just raise your hand. So yeah, this is mirroring nature. Kind of jumped ahead here. So you can see this cyclical reaction happening, and this is circulation, and that's what a reflux reactor does. Yeah. All right, so we're going to talk about different methods to making tinctures, oil infusions. So Folklore method is just like the tried and true, like I am just in a kitchen and I want to make medicine. Like, yeah.
Can you stand so we can...
Oh yeah, The problem is the laptop's over here, but I could, yeah, let me move this. Yeah, there we go. Yep.
Yeah, you do this beautiful slide.
Oh yeah, nobody can see him and just standing in the way. So folklore method right now, here we have poppies, but don't tell anybody. So we have, this is actually turkey tail, reishi, birch polypore, late fall oyster mushrooms and chaga, and some Everclear. And with some dried mushrooms or dried herbs and some alcohol and a jar and thyme, you can make an excellent tincture. And all you really need, I mean, there's a lot of schools of thought. Some people are like, oh, you know, if you have like dried herbs and they crush down really easily, you know, you only want to do like a third of a container and then pour alcohol to fill it. And like, I guess you could do that if you want. My opinion is make it as strong as you can and start really small and feel it out. You can always take less of it. You can put a drop, if it's really strong, you can put a drop in a glass of water and drink a quarter of the glass or a half of the glass if you want, if it's that strong. Or if you want to make it a little bit weaker, that's fine too. If you're going to, there's like a couple of different ways to do the folklore method. So like, you know, if you just want to like have a tincture and not really have to think about it, take dried herbs, dried mushrooms, grind them down to like coffee ground consistency, not like powder, and then put it in about 40% alcohol. You know, if you have like, I think Everclear is what? I don't know, 60? I don't know. You could do like vodka, it's like 40% usually. Put that in there and put it in a jar. Put it in a dark but warm place if you can. You don't want to put it in direct sunlight for a long period of time because the sun is a great extractor, but it's also a great destroyer. So you want to put it in like, what I like to do if you want to really do it up, take a cooler and take a seedling heat mat, put it inside the cooler with a temperature controller on it, and keep it at like 80 degrees and just like keep it in that cooler. And that way it's dark, but it's warm, so it helps to, you know, do that maceration. And then you can shake it, you know, as much as you want. You can do it every other day, once a week, every day, every 5 hours, I don't know. I think more is better, but I think that probably like once a day is probably plenty. And if you wait 2 weeks, probably have a really good tincture. If you wait 4 weeks, it might be better, it might not. It just depends on how dense those compounds are in the material. So something like chaga would probably be a little bit harder. That's right here. It's really dense and you can extract that like so many times. Has anybody made chaga tea? Yeah, you know, you can like boil it and then you can boil it again and again and it'll still be pretty dark each time. But something like, you know, the Tulsi basil, you know, it's so light and delicate, you really don't need much time for it. And the good thing about using 40% alcohol is you would have some water-based constituents and some alcohol-based constituents. You're not gonna get like all of the polysaccharides from like a mushroom. If you just do cold water, you wanna get that heat to really break apart that cell wall, but you're gonna get some of it and it's probably gonna be a pretty good tincture and you can just filter that out and then you're done. Yeah.
Is there an alcohol proof like limitation? Like just having like a 150 proof jar of like, let's say pure grain alcohol.
Yeah.
Is that like too much alcohol? Will it break it down more or will it just make it more potent?
No, it won't break it down more. I've heard people say like, oh, it's too aggressive, but there's no like scientific studies saying that like 100% alcohol is gonna like destroy something. The only thing it would destroy is if you had live enzymes you were looking for. So live enzymes are really delicate and a lot of people like to eat raw food because the live enzymes are still present. If you wanted to do a live enzyme extraction, say with a fresh mushroom or a fresh herb, you would put it in cold water for like 12 to 24 hours and then pull that out and then do this. But I don't do the live enzyme thing. You can't put it in with alcohol because it will kill it. But that's the only thing. I haven't heard any studies saying like certain compounds get killed by too high of an alcohol percentage. The only issue is if there were compounds that could be extracted with cold water, you would have less of that water, so you'd get less of that extraction, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So, and also too, like you have to think about like, do I want to have a tincture with like 100% alcohol? It's gonna like burn the crap out of my mouth, you know. But then the problem is if you want to dilute it, then your tincture is less potent, so you have to take more of it to get the same effect. So that's why like the initial like, oh, I just want to like, you know, I don't have a lot of time, I don't want to do much, I just want to make a tincture like 40%, 30%. It's pretty good. Yeah.
I'm sorry if you've already mentioned this and I didn't catch it, but dehydrating or like extracting dehydrated material.
Yeah.
Does that work out, or would it be better to powderize it if it were already dehydrated? Like,
Oh,
is it
yeah.
best to go from live material.
Well, yeah. So you can do. You talking about like raw, like full, yeah. Versus
if you have
dehydrated.
A bunch of dehydrated lion's mane.
Right.
You know, would it be better to extract it or powderize it? And
Oh yeah. So yeah, I would say it's better to extract it, especially with mushrooms because they have that cell wall, and it's gonna be less bioavailable. A lot of people like just grind up. It depends on what it is too. I mean, like you can take psilocybin dried and you'll know.
Yeah.
And you can do that with lion's mane, or you could eat it fresh, right? You could cook it, which is gonna cook off some of the alkaloids, but you're going to get benefits from that. It's just that from what I've seen, doing a dual extraction with water and alcohol for mushrooms in general, generally speaking, that is the best method. Because mushrooms have a lot of polysaccharides, and those really get extracted well with a hot water bath. And then any of the terpenes and sterols and sesquiterpenes, those are extracted with alcohol. And then there's certain things only need a water extraction or an alcohol extraction, but you just have to like study what you're really looking for and then determine your method of extraction. But like a good like foolproof way is just do a dual extract. It might be redundant in some cases, but with mushrooms it's typically not. The one thing that's really important to do with like live raw mushrooms, whenever you do an extraction, is consider your overall alcohol amount, because the mushrooms, especially lion's mane, has like 90% water. So I did a experiment one time. I did a 95% alcohol extraction of raw yellow fly agaric mushrooms, the Amanita chrysoblema or Gasawii, and I did this for 4 weeks over 6 weeks over 2 lunar cycles, and I measured the alcohol percentage with the hygrometer, and it was like 15% or 5% alcohol from 95. And like I smashed it full with, but yeah, there was a lot of water in there. So I had to add, more alcohol back in. And, it's a lot of math, but if you just go online and type in alcohol dilution calculator, you can figure out like how much alcohol you need to get whatever percentage and whatever volume and get that target ratio, So if you want I want, 100 milligrams per milliliter, you do that math first, and then you would figure out how much volume of whatever percentage of alcohol you have.
So like just really approach every new material very intentionally.
Yeah, always. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I do dehydration extractions only because I'm storing large amounts of mushrooms. I have to, accounting for water weight too. It's just there's no benefit for me because I'm not getting live enzymes anyway.
So you prefer to extract from dehydrated?
Yeah, definitely. And that's like pretty much what most people do. Yeah. But the average person might be like, I have basil in my garden and I want to do like a tincture from that. And they just take it and they just put it in alcohol. And my thoughts would be like, well, especially with herbs too, unless they're like thick succulent type herbs like aloe or something, like if it's just basil, like you'd be fine with 40% alcohol because you're probably going to get like 25. But if you can get a hygrometer from Amazon, they're not that much money. You can measure your alcohol content, and as long as it's above like 20, you're good. I do 25% just to be a little safe and give it a buffer. But people can also do like 15%. Usually it's fine, but whenever you get into like thicker, more concentrated tinctures, they can spoil easier if the alcohol percentage is lower. So another thing is oil infusions. So you could take oil and depending on what you're doing, like say you wanted to make a salve from like calendula, which is really popular for skin. You could do an oil infusion from dried calendula. Now with oil, you definitely want to do dry unless you're going to use that oil infusion within a month or so or two. And you should probably refrigerate it because the water content in the plants are going to spoil the oil. I've seen people do it and it totally works. Like you can do fresh plants, but if you want to store it for more than a couple months, like just dehydrate the flowers or the mushrooms. And you pretty much do the same process as far as like folklore. You can keep it in a dark, warm place. Another method to do, it's just like a little extra step, is say you have high proof alcohol and you want to get like a really good mushroom extract. You can do the folklore method over time and that will get the alcohol constituents. And then you take that mushroom material and you press it out, all the alcohol's gone, you filter that out, you set the alcohol extraction aside, you take those mushrooms and you put them in a crock pot with water. And then you submerge those and you put them on low for like 6 to 8 hours. And then you strain that out and you combine those together. And that's a really potent dual extract because then you're really breaking down the cell walls, you're getting all the polysaccharides and beta glucans. And you can combine that and you use that water to dilute the alcohol, but it's the water you're using is actually medicinal. So you get this really potent dual extract and that's really great. Yeah, I'd say that's pretty much like with folklore method, that's like about where you can go as far as like what I have in my kitchen, basic equipment. Yeah.
Did you add salt to your raw amanita concoction you were making?
Salt? No.
No.
What, to like pull out the water?
I don't know. I just watched your YouTube video on it, which was really good because I'm considering doing that this fall.
Oh, yeah.
But I was just wondering, at the very end, I'm going to take this back to my lab and put some salt, or maybe I heard that.
Oh, the salts. Like I was doing a alchemical spagyric.
I just seen the video on your yellow fly, Garrett, and you were
the
stems and the caps and the alcohol.
Right, yeah. So what I was doing was actually making a spagyric, which is an alchemical preparation. So that is actually the next slide.
Awesome.
You're right on there, man. So spagyrics are pretty cool. Here we have, this is a really good book. If you're interested in alchemy and you want to learn practical alchemy, Spagyrics by Manfred Junius is a really small book and it's something you could read for the rest of your lifetime. Radical Mycology is just a really freaking cool book and you should buy that too. And there's a section on mushroom spagyrics, which actually isn't really talked about. Whenever you learn about spagyrics, it's usually about herbs. But Radical Mycology goes into the mushrooms. And so with alchemy, I've practiced this a little bit and I'm actually about to get into it again because I have a new lab space and my life is a little less chaotic than it was before. Whenever I was doing spagyrics, it was really a really fun experiment. And there's a lot of different things you can do with alchemy, but as far as like plant spagyrics go, you can do distillations, you can do tinctures. They would be considered a triple extract usually. So, and they talk about it in terms of metaphysical elements, mercury, sulfur, and salt. And these are different constituents. We're not talking about actual mercury or sulfur or salt. But so the salts would be the body that is, so like you have this this mushroom tincture, this herbal tincture, and then they discard the mark, which is the material. And what you do with spagyrics is you actually don't discard that. You would take that plant matter, that mushroom material, and you dehydrate it. You get all the alcohol and water out, and then you would burn it. You light it on fire. If you see on that picture right there, that's actually a crucible, and I'm burning the mushroom material. And then I get an ash, and then I take that and I put it in a kiln, and then I'm cooking it down more and more and more to the point where that gray ash becomes white, and that means that all the carbon has left. But what happens is you burn this carbon and there are minerals attached, and those would actually filter out whenever you combine them with distilled water and then reduce that water down. What you're left with, see, this is actually impure, and then this is a pure form. So this is, I think it's potassium carbonate usually with plants. I might be wrong about that. It might be a different element, but that is discarded. But that's discarded in a normal tincture. But in a spagyric or a triple extract, you would get this final component. So what people would say is like, you know, a good dual extract might have the spirit and the soul, but it's missing the body. And whenever you have that spagyric, you get that third element that's you know, composted or tossed. So it's a very deep art, and it's really something that is interesting because one of the elements that, you know, I consider it because I know this, you know, everything that I put my energy into influences like the energy of that thing. And with alchemy, like the one variable that we need to really consider is like what's going on inside of me, right? Like what energy am I putting into this? And it's really important. Another cool thing about spagyrics is, so every herb or plant or mushroom is aligned with some kind of astrological body. So like cordyceps would be a very Martian mushroom because it's very like aggressive and it's red and it's energizing. It's very yang energy, and that's very what Mars is. And every planet has its own kind of personality and constituents, and the plants would reflect that, and the mushrooms would reflect that. And there's different opinions. You know, like some people may say, oh no, I feel like it's more of a Saturn kind of plant. But and there's also like major and minor alignments too. So, and then every day of the week is actually organized with a different planet. So Moon Day, Monday, Tuesday is, I forget, I think Tuesday is Mars. I'm a little rusty on it. Wednesday is Mercury, Miraculous. That's Spanish for, you know, Wednesday, it's Mercury. So you would work with these mushrooms or herbs intentionally on those days of the week. And then you could even consider other things like, oh, there's, you know, like Mars is aligned with Venus on this day, and I really want to work with rose and, you know, cordyceps or something, and, you know, you align those. So it's really as deep as you want to go. And that's why I'm waiting till I'm a little more set up to get back into that, because it's such a fine art. Yeah.
So then you just dump the ashes into like the liquid, I assume, once you get to that.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. So like, say you calcine or burn off the plant material, and then you grind it into, you know, you keep getting further levels of refinement to the point where like the black becomes gray and the gray becomes white, and then, or close to white. And then you would pour that into distilled water and shake it. And then you could put that in like a baking dish and in your oven and kind of evaporate, you know, off the water. And then it goes down and you filter out the ash. So there's no more ash. It's actually just minerals.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah. So you run it through like a coffee filter, filter that out, and then sometimes, you know, you do all this work and you end up with something like that. And that's not good. That's not good. You actually have to take that and start the whole process again. You have to take all those minerals that are impure and burn them again, because there's still carbon in there. And you have to do it again, and oftentimes people do it 3-4 times. And so it takes like, you know, a tincture would like drastically increase the amount of time that it takes.
Right.
And that's another thing to consider when, you know, do I really want to do this? And, you know, and is the energy I'm putting into this like rushing?
Can you do spagyric doing it like folklore method as well then?
Yeah, yeah, you can. And there's other ways to do it. Like, one of the methods is like you would take, say you take Tulsi is my favorite example because I love it. You'd take Tulsi fresh or dried, and you would maybe add a little bit of yeast to it and water, and you'd actually ferment the Tulsi. And then you could put that in a distillation unit and actually distill off. After some time, it would bubble and everything and ferment, and it would actually generate alcohol. It would create ethanol. So you would get I believe it's the mercury of the plant that way. So you're getting the actual alcohol produced by that plant. The problem is that they don't produce a lot because there's not a lot of sugars in them. So like a lot of people might replace that step with just ethanol,
Right.
you know, but it's really like tomato, whatever you want to do,
Right.
you know.
That's neat. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. Yeah, so that's spagyrics, those are cool. Yeah, this is the three primaries. So the mercury, yeah, is the liquor, the ethanol of it. Fermentation, distillation of herbs for the sulfur, or the mercury, that's wrong. Yeah, and then spagyrics are a Latin term coined by Paracelsus, which is like kind of like the semi-modern godfather of alchemy, and spagyria means to separate and recombine. So spagyria, to separate and recombine and purifying. All right. Yeah, with ethanol extractions, you're extracting terpenes, oils, and sterols. And some of the things you would extract with alcohol from mushrooms, well, monoterpenes and sesquiterpenes are essential oils. They're mostly found in plants. They're not really found as much in mushrooms. There's not that many essential oils in them. One example would be pinene from pine trees. It's found in cannabis, pine trees, hops. It's anxiolytic, it's neuroprotective. Some other things you'd extract, and these are like very simple terpenes. Then you have diterpenes. Those are antimicrobial, anti-tumor. Example is arenosine from lion's mane. Actually produces nerve growth factor too. And then you have triterpenes and sterols. One example is reishi, ganoduric acid, which has anti-cancer and anti-HIV effects. So there's that. These are some cool pictures. These are my extractions. So this is cordyceps militaris. Anybody familiar with cordyceps? It's a little zombie fungus, and it's super medicinal. And this is actually precipitated sugars from the mushroom. Some mushrooms have a lot of sugars, some of them don't. But you know, I did an alcohol extraction, and these sugars just, once it cools down, I have it in a glass container. This is a 1 gallon glass container. Once it cools down, those sugars precipitate out to the wall. And I've actually sampled those, and they're like really sweet and spicy and kind of like taste like peanut butter. It's really weird, but I love it. This is alcohol extraction of late fall oyster mushrooms. Anybody ever forage those? The green oysterlings? Those are really medicinal. We have them in our Wild Classic blend. And then over there is actually Blue Lotus. That's a Blue Lotus alcohol extraction, and then beside it is the alcohol that I recovered to reuse for another tincture. Yeah, so water extraction, you could do tea, broth, soup. If you have mushrooms and you just want to like make a mushroom tea, you can totally do that. Turkey tail is really easy. Birch polypore. Some of them taste like crap. Some of them are like fine, but I think that all those bitters and everything is really, really important. Bitters are something that Americans don't really like. We like things to be sweet or savory, maybe umami, but bitters are a really important part of liver health, and a lot of Americans have liver problems. So, something to think about. Get more bitters in your life. They're really good for you. Our tongue is the best detector of molecules. Yeah, and then the water decoction it could be a second step of tincture making if you're doing ethanol first and then water. And the water breaks down cell walls and chitin and pulls out the polysaccharides and beta-glucans, which we already covered. These are water extractions. This is actually Amanita muscaria, and the water extraction of mushrooms there's a lot of polysaccharides, and whenever you combine them with alcohol, they fall out of solution. So has anybody made a tincture and then you get something like really goopy and you don't know what happened? You add this like purely filtered thing and this other purely filtered thing, and then you get this like really goopy mass. Oh, it's polysaccharides falling out of solution when they come into contact with ethanol, and it's totally fine. It's totally normal. You could filter out a little bit of it if you want, and it can be a little snotty, but it's all medicinal. It's all good. These are Amanita muscaria ice cubes that I made. And this is how I first started microdosing. So I'd get these little ice cubes made out of tea. And this is something you could do if you made like a big batch of broth and you didn't want to can it. You could freeze it. And you could take like a little microdose and you're going to get medicine. What time is it?
It's like 8:13, I think I just saw.
Okay, cool. I got 15 minutes. All right. So let's say you want to go to the next level, right? The Folklore method is not enough for you, and you want some fancy at-home equipment. This is really fancy, but I'm just going to say it's unnecessary. This is called Source Turbo, and it's a brand. There's the Source Turbo and the ETO Pro. This does vacuum extraction, so everything is sealed and under vacuum. So whenever you do a Folklore method, you're extracting everything, and whenever you do like a crock pot, you're doing everything at atmospheric pressure. Water boils at a certain temperature at atmospheric pressure. Whenever you're up on a mountain, it boils at a lower temperature. Whenever you're in outer space, it boils at an even lower temperature. You can mimic a lower temperature by sealing and pulling air out with a vacuum pump. And what the benefit of this is, you can actually extract things at lower temperatures, which can preserve those volatile oils and those compounds. So if anybody's ever tried, bringing up Tulsi again, Tulsi tea versus a Tulsi tincture under vacuum is going to be a completely different experience. It feels like you're actually eating the leaf fresh, because those delicate volatile oils are preserved by keeping it under vacuum. So you can boil water at like half the temperature that you would need to boil water at atmospheric pressure. So we're creating a negative vacuum chamber, which is why this is like a next level up. But you don't need this thing. But if you have a lot of money and you don't want to think about it, get this. I think it's like $800. And then you can get yourself a little Buchner funnel, filter everything out, and you got a nice, clean, professional tincture. It's a nice little tabletop unit. It is, you have a lot more control over components, and it's definitely for somebody who's like serious about making their own medicine. If you want to do it yourself, write this down, Tor Kitchen, if you want to do it yourself. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I just have a quick question.
Yeah.
Does that do a similar thing as to what's behind you?
Yeah.
The
Yep.
distillation rate behind you?
Yeah. Another thing that the Source Turbo does is solvent recovery.
Oh, okay.
So you can like make it more potent.
Yeah.
I don't know if you can do water extract. Can you do water extractions with these? Source Turbo, do you know, Nathan?
It depends. Some of the units don't get that temperature under vacuum very well.
Yeah, under vacuum, right.
So if it's under vacuum, it will. But if there are some that run without vacuum, they're just like at-home stills.
Right.
Or non-vacuum systems.
Right.
Those water extracts don't work as well as that way.
Right. Yeah, so water has a much higher boiling point than pure ethanol. So that's something to consider with whatever equipment you're using. The DIY kit is actually Tor Kitchen is people who worked with Source Turbo and they didn't like the expensive price tag on it. And so they just went renegade and like made their own like DIY website and like have a forum and you can build your own thing. So if you want to do something a little bit more than the Folklore and you want to do it yourself, Tor Kitchen is a really really good thing. They have these little charts that help you kind of understand what you're doing. And this works very similar. You have your plant material or mushrooms and your solvent, and then a condenser, and then ethanol recovery. Another thing you can get into is distillation. So alembic stills. This is Erica from Sovereignty Herbs in Athens, Ohio, I believe. This is a copper still. So distillation is really great if you want hydrosols or if you want essential oils. And if you want essential oils, you're going to need a lot of plant material. You can't really get essential oils from mushrooms. It's going to be a huge waste of time, so I wouldn't even try. There probably would be some mushroom that has a lot of essential oils, but from what I've read, it's not really something that you would go for. It's more for plants. So hydrosols are really nice. If you spray your face with like a rose hydrosol, it's like really refreshing. You're getting the plant waters and you're getting essential oils. It just has like a small amount of the essential oils. And I have my distillation kit here. This is a diagram. So if you had the desire to get essential oils, you'd have to run lots of water steam through plants until it reached a point where there was nothing else coming out. And then you would replace that plant material with fresh plant material and you'd run it again. And then you keep doing that over and over again, and it would take multiple hours or days to get a small amount of essential oils. So another thing, if you want an oil version, is just to do an oil infusion. It's not going to be as strong, but it's a lot easier than getting one of these. And if you don't have access to a bunch of plant material, then just doing an oil infusion is great. But if you did have this, you have your steam, water rising into the plant column. Oh, this one, I don't know why I have this. There's no plants in here. You can't see it, but there's a bioflask, which is just another container that would be like in between here and here. And then it would condense the hydrosol and into a collection container. And the essential oils typically would float on top, sometimes on bottom if they're heavier than water. And then you could just release all the hydrosol out and then wait until it's like almost just essential oil and then turn it off, and then you'd be able to switch out another container and collect just the essential oils. But it is a very time-consuming process. They can be made out of glass, stainless steel, copper. The old school alchemists would use them made out of clay, and they'd have like a fire cooking underneath it because everything was just old school. So you can also create ethanol So a still, you take your mash, which is fermented grain or sugar or fruit, and it's producing carbon dioxide and ethanol. To retrieve that ethanol, you would take that solution, I believe you would filter it first probably, and then you would put it in the bottom container and evaporate off, because the ethanol has a lower boiling point that goes first. So it would come out, and you'd be able to collect that and measure the alcohol percentage with a hygrometer. Yeah, and it's just also used for purification. So any impurities that you want, like you can make distilled water with a still, obviously. You could take creek water and put it in a still and get pure distilled water afterwards. Did you have a question? No? Okay, he's itching his eyeball. All right, sock slit extractor. This is a reflux reactor. It's a type of extraction equipment. The concepts are all the same. It's just a matter of how you get there, kind of. So what we have here is the heat element. This is the heating mantle. And this is also known as like a bird's nest or something, I guess. I don't know. This is a round bottom boiling flask, which if you're going to get into a sock slit extractor, a setup like this costs like, I don't know, $400 or something, maybe less. And then you could do a low-tech condenser with an igloo cooler full of ice water and an aquarium fish pump, and you just circulate cold water. I'll explain in a minute. So let's say you're making an ethanol extraction. You would have your ethanol in here, and you'd have your plants or mushrooms in here. This is the plant column, and you'd have like a little filter down here underneath. So can everybody see this arm right here? Hey, let me do this. All right. We got the bypass side arm. So ethanol is down here, and you boil it. You have your heat element on the bottom. And then the steam from that ethanol rises. It comes up this this bypass side arm. And then what happens is we have a condenser on the top. So the condenser is a jacketed vessel. So you have an inner chamber and an outer chamber. This outer chamber has water, cold water coming in and cold water coming out. And you can see right here in this picture, I have a ice chest. It's full of ice and a little bit of water. And this was like my first setup ever I had. And what happens is that steam from the sidearm comes up and it touches that cold glass and it condenses. It goes from this to, ooh, I'm cold. And so then it drops back down, and it drops down into the thimble, which has the mushroom material in it. So it drops down as condensed hot vapor or hot liquid alcohol. And then what happens is you have a siphon arm. So you have one container and then you have a tube coming from the bottom, and those rise equally. And then once you hit that shoulder, which is right here, it drops down and it pulls all the alcohol out, and it all goes back down, and it starts over the process again. And it's this continuous cycle. It's this continuous thing, like we were talking about in the beginning with condensation and evaporation. And what eventually happens is this mushroom or herbal material is going to start running clear. Because normally, whenever you do a first couple runs, it's going to be really dark, depending on what it is. Some things aren't as dark. If you do something like chaga, it's going to be super dark. And it's going to take a lot to get all those materials out. But the beauty of this reflux reaction is that you have only pure steam coming up and only concentrated materials going down. And then you get to a point where it's clear, and that means it's time to swap out your mushrooms or your herbs for new material. And then you can keep running that over and over again, and you can do that for hours or days. And it's a really good method. You can make a super potent tincture really fast. You can actually save all that material, say if you did an ethanol extraction, and then you can run the whole thing again with water. So instead of alcohol, you have water down here now, and you need to adjust your temperature, but the concept is all the same. Yeah.
So the alcohol is taking certain compounds out of the herb or whatever.
Yep.
Well, how's it different than just boiling it in the alcohol?
Yeah, how's it different than boiling it? So, great question. Boiling is, you're doing like a plant soup, and you can filter that out, but there's still gonna be constituents in there. And it's gonna be pretty good, but you're still gonna have constituents in that material after you squeeze it and press it.
Just boil it longer. Right?
Well, it's still gonna be in there because it's in the, like, it'd be the difference of, if you had the mushrooms down here, that'd be the same thing. But if it's up here, you're just like circulating solvent through it. So it's purely extracted. There's nothing left from that mushroom or herb. And it might not be a big difference, but if you're doing it professionally and you're doing it at a really large scale, yeah, go ahead, Nathan.
I like the term washing.
Yeah, washing. Yeah, you're washing it. So it may not be a big difference, but it might be. And you could probably verify that with studies. Go ahead.
Pretty much, in this method, you're breaking down the cell walls more finer instead of boiling.
Yeah, and you're also getting everything out of it, because you could do the water bath or the ethanol bath, and then you squeeze it, and whenever you squeeze it, there's color to that solvent that's still in there. But whenever you squeeze these, there's like nothing. It's like completely clear, and that means that you did a really good extract. So the one downside to these is, if you're doing it at atmospheric pressure, you're boiling this tincture a lot, and it's just boiling and boiling and boiling. So if I were to ever redo everything I was doing, you can just take a hose and attach it here, like a latex hose, and fit it over there, and run a hose and do a little hand pump or a tiny little diaphragmatic pump and pump some of the air out. Because all these joints right here, these are different pieces. So these, where it's frosty right here, you coat that in vacuum grease so it creates a seal. And so you could actually pull all the air out and no air is gonna get sucked back in because it's airtight. And that way, you can run everything at lower temperatures. And yeah, that's the only thing I would do if I could redo that. But the equipment that I have is a little different. So this is whenever I reached peak, I need to get something else because this is crazy. I had 4 of these units running at a time, and that's propylene glycol mixed with water. And that's a really good cooling agent because you can run it like super low temperatures and it doesn't evaporate. And it's not touching any of the mushroom material. So it's all food safe anyway, but it's an outer vessel versus an inner vessel. They don't ever touch the food. And I had a hole in the wall with my condenser on the other side. I was using this is Amanita muscaria in this sock slit right there. You can see, so it comes up red, but then after multiple runs, it's going to be clear, and that's when you know it's done. So then I looked online a lot, and I found this equipment. This guy Warren Kisterbroker from Evolved Alchemy, a friend of mine and mentor, created this out of parts from parts website, shopbvv.com. If you want really cool stainless steel equipment. Another really good one is Granger Supply, actually. They got a lot of nice tri-clamp stainless steel stuff. But basically, the concepts are the same, but instead of a direct heat element, you have another jacketed vessel. So it has hot water circulating around it. So imagine a hot water double boiler. But it's like really freaking hot, like it's like almost boiling. And then, the concept is the same. There's a vapor arm on the side, the condenser on the top, and then the plant column, instead of something like this, which you can get bigger glass units, but they're really expensive and they're also still as fragile. So I've only broken one of these one time, and it's very fragile. It's borosilicate glass, but it's still glass. Stainless steel is great because you can't break that. And the plant column is great. I could put like 5 pounds of.
Huge. That's the plant column, I take it, right?
This is the plant column. It's like 48 inches and 6 inches wide. You can put 5 pounds of herbs in there. So if you wanted to make like a big cannabis RSO tincture, I could put 5 pounds of weed in there, and I could do a crazy extraction in like 12 hours. And then the other great benefit of this is, imagine same concept, but there's a valve here, or a tee off valve. So I make the extraction, and then it's running clear, and there's nothing left in there. I can put that tincture back in the bottom, and I can evaporate it and distill it. So then I can make it super potent. And then maybe I winterize it in the freezer. I take that extraction, I put it in the freezer for 12 to 24 hours, and then I filter that really quick, get all the chlorophyll out. You can pull out all the alcohol, and then I run it in my vacuum oven, and I can make shatter. Yeah, or you can make a really potent RSO. Yeah. So yeah, this is cool because it's distillation, extraction, and solvent recovery all in one. And it's indirect heat element. It's also running under vacuum. So I have a vacuum hose on the top, and it runs into my other room where I have my condenser and everything. And I can get it down to like negative 25 PSI if I want to. It's like as negative pressure as outer space. It's freaking crazy. Yeah, and the vacuum line has to have a cold trap too. So cold trap's like basically trapping any steam that comes through before it hits the vacuum, because then an oil-based vacuum will be destroyed by alcohol and water. It's oil-based. So if you had like a diaphragmatic pump, those can handle water or alcohol, but I have a little cold trap right there. I mean, this talk is folklore to lab tech, so we're getting into all the advanced stuff now. And just to summarize, because I'm probably going over time, is vacuum ovens, rotary evaporators. These are kind of like finishing equipment, depending on what you're using, what your goal is. So say you had a sock slit or a distillation unit, and you wanted to get your tincture really potent, you could get a rotary evap or a rotovap. And what that's going to do is it's going to pull a vacuum on it, and it's going to gently heat it with water. So your tincture would be in here, and it's usually water, and it rotates. So it's always circulating. There's no hot spots. And it would pull out solvent, so you get a really condensed tincture. And then let's say you get it really, really, really thick, but maybe you want to make some shatter, which is like, basically a solventless form of an extraction. I've done it with Amanita muscaria, Blue Lotus. You could do it with cannabis. Getting a vacuum oven is really great because, again, it's pulling a vacuum on an oven. So an oven that's in outer space. That's pretty cool. And then you just bake everything at lower temperatures, and then you're preserving all these delicate compounds. So here's some Blue Lotus shatter or goo, an Amanita shatter. And these are great if you don't want alcohol, you don't want water, or maybe you want to add it to another thing to make something where you don't want alcohol or water in it, like maybe a food product or beverage. It's really strong too.
And then how would you consume that?
Just eat it.
Okay, that's right.
Yeah, you can just eat it, or you can actually dab it. So you can vape it. So you could put that. I don't know. Like a dab rig would work, but if you wanted it in like a vape pen, you'd need to have it more refined.
Okay.
Yeah. So
when you eat it, how much are you talking about?
I mean, it depends on the concentration, but like with the muscaria and Blue Lotus resins, there's like a 3-to-1 ratio. So my dose was like 72 milligrams for like a microdose, it would be like 1 dropper full of the highest strength tincture I make. It'd be like 72 milligrams. It's like a grain of rice. Sorry, this is freaking light back here. Yeah, you stand right there. You're good. This light is bugging me. So yeah, there's many ways up the mountain. Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
What is basically, can you essentially describe the difference between distillation and soxolate and what would be the benefits between one or the other? And also, would distillation be considered dual extraction or triple extraction?
So distillation would be one method of extraction, but with distillation, you're getting the sesquiterpenes and essential oils.
Okay.
So you can also get essential oils with an alcohol extraction usually.
Do people distill mushrooms?
Not usually.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then we don't
Yeah.
need to talk about
Yep.
that one. So
Yeah.
basically, just the next step up from folklore for mushrooms would be the soxolate.
Yeah, this would be for a dual extract for tinctures.
Right.
So we're talking about tinctures versus hydrosols and essential oils.
Right. Yeah.
So like, it depends on what you want.
I got thrown
Yeah.
off by the hydrosols.
Yeah.
Just that one. Yep.
Yep.
thank you.
Cool. Yeah. Any more questions? How are we all doing? We all still awake? All right. So there's many ways up the mountain. There's so many different ways to make a tincture, to make anything. And it really just depends on like what you want and how bad you want it. And
How much money you have.
and how much money and time you have, right? Everything is a balance a lot of times with time and money. If you have a lot of money and a lot of time, maybe you can make a business out of it. But if you don't have a lot of time and you have a lot of money, maybe you get the Source Turbo, you know. But if you have a lot of time but not a lot of money, maybe you just do the Folklore method and you're gonna have a great tincture. And the biggest thing is you're putting your love into it and it's your thing. And that's really the best medicine. Yeah.
It seems like there's a lot of chemistry or whatever involved, and it can be complicated. So I'm just kind of curious as to how you learned all this. From
Yeah.
going towards, I want to make stuff to heal myself, to my friends and family, to, I mean, you have things to
The
learn.
rabbit hole.
And
Yeah.
like books, internet.
Right. Well, at the time I had a lot of time, but not a lot of money. So I spent a lot of time learning, and I'm always a self-learner. That's how I got into mushrooms. I'm a millennial, I Google everything, you know, and I ask questions. I find people are really smart and I ask them questions, and I find people to be my mentors, and I might be a little annoying to them, but they appreciate it because I want to learn. And I think that it's, you know, when you have like a genuine desire, you'll find a way. And yeah, so it's actually not super complicated either. I mean, you know, you can study all these compounds and everything, but you don't need to know. Like, if you want, you can just do the extractions because you know that's what other people do and it works, right? And you feel better. But I like to know more and more and more, and I always go down the rabbit hole.
Well, how did you do that? With books or just more online stuff?
Online and books and friends. Yeah, because like, you know, I started going to mushroom festivals and learning more about mushrooms and how other people do their extractions and comparing, you know, like, oh, this is that method versus this one. And, you know, and I had, my friend Drake was a really good inspiration for me because he was like, if you want to level up, you need to get this. And I was like, how do I do it? You know, like messaging him every day, like, I don't know what I'm doing. And he's like, you need to do that. And then Warren with the stainless steel, I was like, hey, I'm having a problem, you know? And he's like, all right, you know, and you have to trial and error too, make mistakes, you know? Like one of the worst things you can do with one of these is overfill it. And then you have a giant vomiting piece of equipment with like mushrooms coming out the top, and it's like burning because it's getting down into the heating mantle, and there's always a fire extinguisher nearby.
Is
But
that considered dual or triple?
This one?
Extracted, yeah, for the soxolate.
Well, you can do single or dual.
Okay.
Yeah, so like you know, it's just single, like one extraction would be just with alcohol or just water, right? Like a water decoction could be a single extract.
So how do people get the triple extraction then?
Well, the triple extraction would be that spagyric.
Okay.
Or maybe like, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different things. Like you get into like a lot of nuances. Like I make a Blue Lotus triple extract. I don't really call it that because I don't want to be misleading to people, but it's like I capture the absolute oils, which is a whole other conversation. And then I do an alcohol extraction. That's one other extraction. And then I actually do a distillation. So I get the hydrosol and the essential oils, and I put all this together. And that's what the Blue Lotus tincture is that I make. But that's just like me messing around and finding out. Yeah, yeah. And like I have my reasons for that. And like there's no point in really water extracting Blue Lotus. Even though the tea kind of works, whenever you make tea, it's not going to be as effective as ethanol. And you get a lot of weird mucilage whenever you get into like a really intense water extraction. So I don't do that. But there is essential oils, and it makes a nice hydrosol. So I use that as my water component because I don't know, why not?
Right.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yep. So there's many ways up the mountain, and you just got to find what works for you. So thanks everybody. If you want to learn more, I have a YouTube channel. I also am right over there behind on the other side of the food tent. I have all my tinctures with me. I am going to be leaving at some point tonight. So if you need anything today, why don't you come over and talk with me? And yeah, have a great mushroom festival. Yeah.